Hi guys, how are you? So nice to connect to you. Welcome to this video, brand new video, and this topic might interest you. How does a disease manifest? How does illness manifest and spread? So basically, my name is Laura from Pleiadian Healer at pleiadianhealer.com. And today we're going to talk about diseases, also diseases, and how they manifest throughout your body and what layers they go through. So I have my drawing pad right here. We're going to do another drawing, and let's see how great it turns out this time around. Okay, so for an illness, I also got some notes here, so I'm just going to read off my notes in case I'm not looking at the camera. Okay, so first of all, you have a disease, right? What is a disease or dis-ease? It's an illness. So it's something that makes you feel not at ease. It's component of this and then ease. What I'm going to talk about more is the physical ones. So not necessarily so much the mental illnesses. Those are maybe a different video. And I think I already discussed those in a video too. I might re-upload that. If not, you can find it on my Odyssey, but this is really going to focus more on the physical ones. So in order for a physical illness or a disease to manifest in your body, it has to go through a multitude of layers beforehand. And so we're going to work through the distractions as well. What are these layers? You would have the astral layer or energetic layer, which kind of lies outside of your body. Then you have the emotional layer. Then you have the mental layer. And the very last layer is the physical layer. And that's the one where you will feel it. Okay, so we're just going to draw a stick figure. Finally got the word for that one. This is a genderless stick figure. I'm going to throw a smiley face on it too. So this is our person. Okay. Person looks quite happy in this drawing. Now this person has an astral body that you can't necessarily pick up on with the physical eye. So the astral body lies outside. We're going to just use A for astral. Just, terminology, you can fight about the terminology. You can call it energy layer, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to call it the astral layer. So layer A lies outside of this body. And we're going to use the example of cancer or maybe a broken foot even, but let's just start with cancer. So just as an example, okay, these are all just examples, not real life. This person has a past life somehow in which this person was killed in a certain way or whatever. And then somehow this person encounters that other, so this stick figure person encounters the person who killed them in this life. It could be that it's a parent, like let's just say it's like a father, son, mother, daughter, whatever. So there's a lot of kind of like resentment held against this person. You usually see this in breast cancer. Okay. I know this doesn't necessarily apply for men or like in the womb area, that type of cancer, like cervical cancer, those kind of things. That usually has to do with the breast has to do with nurturing. So a mother-child relationship, mother-daughter relationship usually. So if the child has a challenging relationship with the mother, which I already discussed in several videos, a lot of people have a challenging relationship with their parents. It's going to be one of the most karmic relationships you can have with your main caregiver. That's why you're also being reincarnated with them over again, kind of being forced to reincarnate with them over and over again. Just kind of, they throw this at you in the astral. Oh, you need to clear the soul contract with them, that and that, whatever. Anyhow, long story short, you were kind of killed off by this person, and then you kind of encounter them again in this life or whatever. So now you have this in the astral, like this occurrence somehow that, ooh, okay, there's kind of like this form of resentment and anger. This moves into the emotional, which is the E layer. I don't know if you can see that. And also into the mental layer. So emotional would be what, especially with cancer, and this is a fact, anyone who's ever had cancer can most likely confirm that cancer is usually based on anger, feeling anger towards a certain situation. So the emotional layer component would be anger, and it manifests in the mental through thoughts. It's being processed in thoughts somehow, until in the last layer, it's the physical. So we're going to use P. The P is here in the person's body. So I'm just going to stick with the breast cancer example. It kind of starts manifesting as those precancerous cells. And then if nothing's done about it, more into the cancer cells and all of that, in this case, breast cancer. Why am I using breast cancer? So breast cancer has to do with nurturing, being nurtured. That's why mothers breastfeed their children, right? That's a good example of it. But basically, let's just say you have this horrible past life with your mother. You kind of hold that resentment and anger towards them throughout this entire lifetime. It's never worked through, because usually people don't really work through. They don't usually, even if you have a therapist, whatever, it's not usually addressed in a form that it should be. And then it manifests into the mental state. So the emotional and mental state can happen at the same time, by the way. It's not just this happens before the other or vice versa. They can happen, they can go on at the same time. But if this is not being worked through and you hold resentment and anger for like decades and decades or for a much longer time, it will manifest in the physical body. And that's like the last resort of your spiritual being, of you as a spiritual being, saying like, hold on, there's something wrong here. You need to work through this. Okay. So it's not always the case, but a lot of times it may be the case in that instance. Other types of cancers would be like the cervical cancer is a similar circumstance. There's some sorts of resentment or anger that has to do with procreation and those kind of things too. A lot of times these diseases and illnesses do carry over from lifetime to lifetime. I do want to emphasize that. So when a person, for example, has severe migraines, I grew up with a sister who she had migraines from an early age on. She's also targeted, don't get me wrong, I do realize that, but she had severe migraines, and it was, I know now, but it was legit through means of, she was just, I think they chopped her head off or something in a previous lifetime, whatever it was, something that had to do with the head. That's what it was. And no one could figure out, we were going to like naturopathic, holistic healers from an early age on, because my mother was more on that path, luckily, so she didn't take pharma or anything. But we were going to those for the longest time, and I don't even know how exactly it resolved itself, but somehow I think the moment she probably moved away from home, maybe it dissolved itself through that. But basically, it's like just those kind of things. A lot of them are past life related. I just want to put that out there. Now, in other circumstances, it could just be related to what you're going through in this lifetime too. Okay, like holding a resentment or anger. When a very serious disease manifests, usually it has to do with more negative emotions, resentment and anger. It doesn't necessarily have to do with, oh, I love this person so much, I'm now going to develop cancer because of the person. No, that's not really how it works. Usually it has to do with you holding so much anger and resentment towards a situation and a person that illness will manifest itself like that. I know there are other things going on too. The entire, whatever happened from 2020 and on, like whatever was put into people's bodies over these past years, yes, all of those can also manifest as illnesses or diseases, but that's not necessarily what I'm talking about in this particular video. So I'm really talking about things that can be kind of tracked and traced in that way. And so a disease has to go through several different layers beforehand. It has to travel through the astral or energy layer, then through the emotional layer where it needs to be felt. And then the mental layer, both of those, by the way, can happen at the same time before it goes to the physical body, which is the physical layer. And so obviously, if you can't pick up on it in the astral, which is very hard, unless, like shamans are usually very good at picking up on that already before it happens, but it's not what, for most people, that's just not what happens. Okay. So for most people, where you can already intercept a lot would be here in the emotional layer. And that's really where you want to do the most work. When you're feeling something and you're not working through your emotions and feelings, you really want to take time and do that, because you don't want to hold on to that anger and to that resentment forever, especially if it is directed towards yourself and towards another person. You want to make sure you resolve that almost instantaneously or over a good amount of time. I am not saying spiritual bypassing. Okay. I'm not talking about the new agers who are like, oh, you can never feel bad emotions. Otherwise, there's something wrong with you. You always have to be in a good vibration and love and light. That's not what I'm talking about. You are allowed to feel anger and guilt and all of those things. Absolutely. But when they come up, you want to make sure you work through those, because those are wounds and triggers that are coming up for a reason. So when we react to something in such a way, as a friend does something to us, it really pisses us off. It's like, why did I get so triggered at that? Oh my gosh, because there's always a reason for that. Obviously, you as a spiritual being, as a divine being, you want to pause right then and there, or maybe after the incident, whenever you have a moment to reflect, you want to pause and be like, why did I react in such an extreme way to whatever that person did or whatever they said? What's going on inside of me that is triggering it in such a way? And you want to do that for every single situation. I constantly get triggered too by certain people or situations. 2020 and on was like a pretty constant trigger moment for me personally in my life as well, especially in the city I'm working in, or the city I'm living in. Let's put it that way. Because I was like, how can people be that dumb and follow the agenda? And this, it was a constant trigger. But if you don't work through that and you don't address it, it's just going to get stuck in your own body, and it could manifest as a physical illness and disease for some people, is my point. Not all the time. I'm not saying, okay, some friend did something really dumb and stupid and it triggered you so much that now you're not friends anymore and you're not going to develop cancer. That's no. But certain things that really trigger you, that make you feel like emotionally angry, hurt, upset, and wounded, you want to work through that, because your body is not going to it's not capable to hold on to that without having an effect over time. And so, getting away from the cancer example, you see this in bitter people, people who are resenting their life because maybe when they were younger, you talk about the concept of destiny theft, or how I like to call it, opportunity theft. For example, they weren't allowed to attend this university or follow this path as an artist, or whatever it was that was kind of stolen from them, and they weren't able to influence that. If that happens too many times over time, that person might become a very bitter person. And we all know people like that who are just very bitter, right? Like, I know a ton of people, like when I grew up, I feel I grew up only around bitter people because people were just really unhappy with their lives in the area I grew up in. But it doesn't have to be that way. That's kind of what I realized over my life too. If it really doesn't have to be that way, you create the life that you want, or at least you're kind of able to direct it in the way and direction you want it to go. So, this bitter person, and this bitter person, when they get older and older, the older they get, the more they might complain about certain health issues. And I can assure you, it's most likely the lifestyle that they lead. Maybe they're so bitter, they constantly smoke tobacco, or they constantly just eat unhealthy, whatever it is, like they don't really honor their self and their body because they're already in that negative mindset. So, or maybe they have these health issues because they're keeping all of their emotions bottled up. And eventually their body is just not going to be able to take it anymore. And so they're going to have a lot of various random things. Like, I had a neighbor once, she was a chain smoker, don't get me wrong. So that's already not really working in her favor. But after she hit a certain age, I think after she hit the age of 50 or 55 years old, which is really not that old. Okay. So she was constantly complaining about a lame knee or something with her knee, like really not working, like her feet, her legs, something like that. I don't even know. Every time I saw her, like almost every night I saw her, and it got so bad to a point where I didn't even want to run into her anymore. Every time I saw her, there was something wrong. There was her knee. She needed to have a million operations done. And then all of a sudden it was something like upper respiratory, which that obviously had to do with smoking. But there was always something. My point was there was always some weird health issue. And I don't think it was just imagined or she was just kind of over exaggerating it either, even though some people do that. It's true. But I literally think the universe was giving her all the signs that she needed. And just because she kept, and she was a very bitter person, I do want to point that out, because somehow it was always her husband's fault, the way her life went, or it was always her kid's fault, or it was always like the other neighbor's fault, that, it was always someone else's fault. The way her life went, it was she never wanted to take responsibility for her own life. And I'm sure we know people like that in our own lives. I know plenty of those. Um, and we sometimes call those toxic people, right? And whatever's toxic to you might not be toxic to me, by the way. So if you think that person's toxic, I might think, well, they're not that toxic. That person's more toxic, just those kind of things. So anyhow, we all have those people in our lives, right? And with her, I felt it was just so many bottled up emotions over decades and decades and decades that just weren't worked through. She wasn't addressing them at all. She wasn't addressing her resentment, her anger, her wounds, that they just started manifesting in her body. And usually when it has to do with knees and knee movement, that is direction. That is your body giving you a sign that you're not moving in the right direction. Hips too. So anything that has to do with hips, with knees, with feet, like a lot of that does come up in my shamanic healing sessions too, where I'm like, it's all direction. They're trying to keep you in that one direction, or you're keeping yourself in that one direction, whereas maybe you should consider a different direction. So not even necessarily like walking in a different direction, but like a different direction in life. And that's a form of your soul communicating to you as well. So if you're unable to pick up on it in the astral, which sometimes we are when we experience psychic attacks and all of that, some people who are very energetically attuned to that can pick up on that in an instant, But if you're unable to do so, that's okay. It's still going to go through a few other layers, and the emotional layer is a huge one. So if you feel a certain way about something, and it's not happiness, it's not a positive emotion, it's more on the negative side, you want to make sure you address that. And the reason you want to address it has nothing to do with ascending into the fake 5D narrative or whatever, but the reason you want to address it is because you don't want it traveling further into these other layers, into your physical body. You want to catch it, and you want to be able to resolve it or dissolve it somehow, and so that it doesn't even have to manifest as a broken leg or as cancer or something else in your body, or just like as a lung issue or whatever. And so you call this a way of living consciously or in communion with your own self, in communication with your soul, as opposed to living unconsciously or kind of living on autopilot. But I think it's important to, take note of these type of things. Let's just see if there were any other things I wanted to mention. So yeah, so with the astral, a lot in the astral can be past life related. I do want to point that out. A lot of especially these illnesses, we had like skin issues in my most recent YouTube live. We were talking about something similar to neurodermitis and those type of things. Those things usually have to do with people being burnt at the stake or burnt somehow, dying through fire in a previous lifetime. And when people are very stressed in this lifetime, it kind of comes to light again. So the body reacts because we carry a lot of these past life memories in our DNA, and we have the same DNA from lifetime to lifetime. So a lot of it is past life related. It can also be related to psychic attacks, which we can talk about that in a different video. But basically, when you're constantly ill or sick, or even like a larger disease kind of manifests out of the blue and you literally have no idea, that can be a strong form of psychic attack. I have friends who, one of them was constantly psychically attacked by someone, and the someone was similar to a witch. She was like a wife of a shaman, whatever. So she was constantly being attacked. She didn't know it was this person specifically attacking her until someone else told her, because when you're in a situation where you trust the person, you work with them, all of those things, we don't necessarily see what's going on. We need like a third party kind of observing that and being able to tell you that's kind of what's going on. You know, you're being attacked by this person because they're jealous, because you're 30 years younger than them, those type of things. So that was happening to her. She was constantly sick for a period of like 1+ years. And the constant sickness, and it was so ironic because she was an energy worker herself. You know, she was doing shamanic healing means and everything. It's pretty powerful in that too, but she could not put one and one together because she was really in the vicinity of these people all the time and she trusted them. And the way it manifested was every month there was something else. There was a cold, a head flu, there was like some skin issues, always something else. It wasn't like severe cancer or those type of things, but she was basically constantly sick for the duration of that year. And it had to do with being psychically attacked by this other person who was jealous of her. Someone asked me about sleep paralysis. So that's usually psychic attacks by astral entities, not necessarily related to diseases. They could, I guess, manifest as a disease or illness eventually. So you have, yeah, so it works from the astral into the emotional body, into the mental, and then the physical. The physical is the very last layer. I just want to point that out again. So that's like the last resort of your body, kind of telling you there's something wrong here. We need to resolve this somehow. And before that, you have those other layers that where you can catch it in a form or another, or at least be attuned to it. So it's kind of imperative to listen to your feelings, to tune into your feelings. And there are a lot of different techniques that people have nowadays. You know, people talk about the emotions code or just like emotional therapy and all of that. I do think there's something to it for sure. I think it can be quite important. You know, there are different types of people who specialize more in that. Also, we hold a lot of emotions in our physical body. So when people talk about the tapping, which is basically tapping like certain layers of your body, certain areas of your body, if you do it the right way, it can be very effective. But a lot of people, I feel, never learned how to do it the right way. And because it's gotten so mainstream at this point, it's very hard to find a teacher who actually knows what they're doing. That's what I found from my own psychic insight. But if you do the tapping the right way, and you do it consistently and you know what you're doing, it can be very effective in dissolving a lot of emotional stuff that's going on in your body. So make sure you address those emotions, because the emotions are going to be something that we can all pick up on. You know, we can all feel that wave of anger coming at us when we're talking to another person, or, you know, we can all feel something. So you want to make sure you pay attention to those emotions. And it's a form of also paying attention to your own inner knowledge, your understanding, your intuition too. All right, I hope this helped. I hope this kind of clarified it. Let me know what you think if you have anything else to add, and I will talk to you in the next video again. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, guys.